our participants today, Elaine Warren, and Elaine, you can wave there. Elaine has agreed to be our note taker and reporter, and she'll take 5 minutes at the end of our hour today to review or recap the highlights of the presentation and the Q&A, and you can have a chance to add anything that you want emphasized or anything that she might have missed. Let me think. I want to tell you how the hour is going to go. After introductions, we're going to have a presentation from Rochelle Towers about 1,000 grandmothers. That'll last 15 or so minutes. Then we'll have a question and answer period. It'll be another 15 or 20 minutes. And then Elaine will do a recap and you can provide any additions. And then we're going to talk about next Friday, which is Friday the 14th of May. And that's our second large climate action session. But at this point, I want to go around the Zoom room here and have people at least say their names and their village affiliation. And so I'm going to go on how it appears to me on the screen. I'm going to start with you, Meryl, on the left of me.
I'm Meryl Gerhardt. I'm a volunteer with Ashby Village.
And Elaine?
Elaine Warren, and I'm with the San Francisco Village.
And Rochelle Lefkowitz.
And I am indeed Rochelle Lefkowitz with Ashby Village.
And Julie?
I'm Julie Freestone, and I am also with Ashby Village.
And Steve Hayashi.
I'm associated with San Francisco Village.
Thank you. And John and Kathleen.
We're associated with the SF Village.
Okay, thank you. Cora.
I'm with the San Francisco Village.
And
My
Linda.
name is Cora Shaw.
Cora Shaw, thank you. Linda.
San Francisco Village.
And Susan Pierpont. Point.
Morning. I'm Susan Pierpoint. I'm from Ashby Village.
And Francis.
You're on mute.
Frances Gorman from San Francisco Village.
Thank you. And Judith.
Judith Coates from Ashby Village.
And Joe Coffey, whose name we see.
Joe Coffey from San Francisco Village.
Okay, thank you. And it's not Janet Bertram.
No, it's Will Dvorak, and I'm from the Ashby Village.
Okay, thank you. And then Diane Resick.
I'm from Ashby Village also.
Did I miss anybody who's on the call so far? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Now to the Climate Action Organization for today, 1,000 Grandmothers. Some of you may have heard Rochelle Towers, and I think it was, I'm not sure whether Carol Rothman was with you back in March, on March the 5th, but we had a great presentation then from 1,000 Grandmothers, and we're going to have another great one today, but today's going to be longer because we have an hour, or what's left of an hour, and there wasn't enough time for Q&A back in March, so we thought it would be good to have these 5 Friday morning climate talks to give us more of a chance to learn about each organization. Today, Rochelle is going to explain about the organization. She's going to give us some specific actions and opportunities to consider for being involved in. I think she's got some slides to show us, and I believe she's going to report on the upcoming trip of 30 grandmothers to demonstrate at the Line 3 in northern Minnesota. And if I understand correctly, Rochelle, you can tell us when you get into this. Line 3 is a proposed pipeline expansion to bring nearly 1 million barrels of tar sands per day from Alberta, Canada to Wisconsin. So we'll learn more about that in a bit. And now I just want to introduce Rochelle Towers and welcome you and turn it over to you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm so glad to see your beautiful elder faces. Makes me feel in good company. Well, let's start with the slides. We might as well get them going.
Okay, just a note to Bill and Julie, I've made you co-hosts because I'm going to be sharing the slides and advancing them. So if I'm distracted, could you admit people as they arrive?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. All right, I will share slides. There we go. So are the slides visible now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oops, sorry, I just goofed. I apologize for a second.
A quick slideshow.
Yes, it was.
Did you get it all?
No. I put it in the wrong view. Just 1 second. I'm not actually a PowerPoint user. That's my problem. Okay. We all need a few tech glitches in order to.
I'm
Oh.
very happy that you can make it happen at all, so thank you.
All right, okay, are the slides visible now?
Thanks. So I'm Rochelle Towers. I'm one of the co-founders of 1,000 Grandmothers for Future Generations. We started in 2016, working in solidarity with Native grandmothers in the Standing Rock struggle to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline. And we don't use a biological definition of grandmothers, but apply it to elder women who are passionate about leaving a more livable and just planet for all of the children. Some of us have grandchildren. Some of us don't have any grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren. The screen is not showing the full slide. There we go. Thank you. So you can move to the next one. And in our work, and you can move, we have a cherished relationship with a group of Lakota grandmothers on the Cheyenne River Reservation in South Dakota. And among them, it's actually the 1, 2, 3, 4th woman from the left in the white ribbon skirt is Madonna Thunderhawk, who is a lifetime activist, an occupant of the Wounded Knee struggle and of Alcatraz, all of these struggles for the rights of Native Americans. And some of you may remember when that was happening, the struggle on Alcatraz right here in the Bay Area. Next. We organized a fundraiser, a big film event showing a film called Warrior Women, which if you just look it up, you can rent it. It's really a wonderful film featuring the story of Madonna and one of her daughters. And we have continued working in close partnership with Indigenous organizations such as Idle No More in the Bay Area.
Whoops, did I lose the slides again?
Yes, you're in my office and welcome.
Yes, no, I'm having my own problems this morning. I'm going to stop the share for a second.
Sure.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next. We help to plan the days of protest and education in San Francisco in 2018 that were part of the Global Climate Action Days. And that brought 30,000 people into the streets. Next.
Do we remember?
And here you see something that we are well known for, which is blocking and closing streets so that action can happen, so that many street murals can be painted. And we have become pretty experienced at dealing with irate drivers who want to turn into that street and can't, educating passersby about the issues, and working and dealing with the police. And it has really worked well to have older women doing this job of shutting down the streets, because generally the police go a lot lighter on us oldies, and it's a bit of a eye catcher. You know, what are all these old people doing out there? And what we're doing out there is defending Mother Earth. That's what we're doing. Next. So, oh, can you go back one? I think I might have missed one. Yes, there we are. Here we are standing in front of the offices of the Army Corps of Engineers, blocking the doors because we are trying to urge them to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline. Next. And for people who want to be involved with nonviolent direct action, we have a working group who provides training. And people doing nonviolent direct action don't necessarily risk arrest or sit chained to something. There are many, many roles. And so while some people may be willing to risk arrest, we know many people are not. And there are many needed support roles that have absolutely nothing to do with getting arrested. So here we are at one of our trainings. Next. We know that there are many ways to take action, and we are grandmothers of grandmother age with different capacities, different life experience, different interests, and we know not everyone wants to be out in the street or can be. And so we have a legislative working group who really follow the lead of 350 Bay Area on legislation. And we urge congressional leaders to take action. We attend hearings in Sacramento and do many other things. And when we get back.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, it's just there we go.
All right, next. So here we are at a hearing that we organized as part of a coalition, a very big turnout to stop the dredging of San Francisco Bay. Some of you may have been aware that the Army Corps of Engineers wanted to go ahead and dredge a deeper section of San Francisco Bay to allow larger tankers which would then bring more filthy tar sands to be refined at the Phillips refinery in Rodeo at taxpayers' expense. And we stopped them. We won. With 5 refineries in the Bay Area, protecting the Bay and all the life around it has been a focal point. Next. So here we are protesting at the gates of Chevron when there was an explosion. There are so many flare incidents, and some of you may live where you can actually have a view of the bay and see those plumes go up, putting toxic chemicals into the air. Next, please. Art plays a big role in what we do. You've no doubt just seen how colorful our banners and our work when we go out is, because we have many women who put their talents to work to make art, to bring beauty and hope and inspiration. Some of us can design and draw, and others like me are happy to fill in the paint and try to stay within the lines. That's about what I can offer there. We made these beautiful parasols to be part of a big walk for the Green New Deal at the Solano Stroll. Next. And there we are. Next. Next. We also understand that the causes and impacts of climate crisis are deeply intertwined. We stand with the refugees at the border, and we know that climate change is going to, already has, and will continue to result in an increase of climate-driven refugees across the globe. Next. Our support of young people is really at the essence of who we are as grandmothers, and we reach out to support young people who are rising and taking spectacular leadership. Here, the youth of Extinction Rebellion and Sunrise took off from school to demand that Chevron, we're at the Chevron headquarters in San Ramon, stop poisoning their futures. And in addition to standing alongside them and behind them, we also made hundreds and hundreds of sandwiches. Next slide, please. And there they are. Next, please. So the relationships across the generations is something that is very important to us to strengthen. It's just really the segregation of our generations just makes no sense. We have lived long, we know many things. There's a lot we have to contribute, and there's so much that we can do to support and uplift the youth who are coming. And then, of course, the pandemic happened and everything changed. And suddenly we were no longer in the streets, but we were locked in our homes and had to rethink everything. And before we had met face to face in quarterly meetings, what we call gatherings, but now we were on Zoom. And during that time, I think like most of you, we tried to figure out what we could do to be most effective. And again, probably like many of you, we did electoral work. We wrote thousands of postcards and made hundreds of phone calls during the election. Next. We joined car caravans. And next. When our democracy looked like it was threatened and would be stolen, we headed into the streets during the pandemic, staying 6 feet apart, well masked, to paint the streets in downtown Oakland to say every vote must be counted. This is the end result of the mural, which was designed by a man named David Solnit, who is just a genius at political street art. And of course, we all spent our time filling all that in with paint. And most recently, you can go to the next. We have been working to stop Line 3. Line 3 is a pipeline being routed through the Ojibwe territory in Minnesota. That's in northern Minnesota. If completed, this will go through their wild rice wetlands. This is their food that has fed them throughout history. It is their culture, it is their land, it is their water. And if completed, this pipeline will emit the equivalent amount of pollutants to 50 coal plants a day. It would like be building an additional 50 coal plants. We raised $15,000 for supplies for the winter water protectors who have been camping in the freezing northern Minnesota winter in frigid temperatures to put their bodies on the line to stop Line 3 from being connected and run under the Mississippi River, twice under the Mississippi River and through 200 bodies of water. And so next, we made banners and we did a banner drop over Interstate 80 in Berkeley, responding to the call to increase the awareness and support the Stop Line 3 efforts. And this is something that we have been sending many letters to Joe Biden about, and we're about to launch a campaign to Jill Biden, as you know, from grandmother to grandmother, as women who want to see what we want to see a better world for the generations to come. Next. There it is. Next. And we helped organize a multiracial, multi-generation street mural painting in front of the Oakland Federal Building, where different groups created their own circles. And next. So here we are painting and painting. And the next. And this is ours. This was our circle. This was our circle. And we have been in a major organizing campaign for Line 3. About 26 Bay Area grandmothers are leaving at the end of this month for 4 days to go to northern Minnesota. They'll be joined by 5 of the Lakota grandmothers from South Dakota, and do what we can to support this struggle. Some of us will be willing to risk arrest, others of us will not. There will be ceremony. We are there to support and draw attention and hopefully be of some particular use as grandmothers who make this effort to let the world know that this particular pipeline, although they're all terrible, is of great importance, because these tar sands, if this stops, this really turns off the faucet for tar sands coming out of Alberta and down through the United States. This pipeline would cut through the territorial land, which should be protected by treaty, of the Ojibwe people, and it will connect in Wisconsin and flow down through the long, long, long pipeline that goes from Wisconsin all the way down to Louisiana. Not one drop of this oil will be used in the United States. This is all for export. So this is all for profit to be made to increase the carbon in the air globally. That will be the result of this. And because this pipeline will exist, it means that every ounce of oil will be taken out of Alberta, even though there are hundreds of tankers filled with oil idling on coasts around the world because of the lack of demand for oil. So, of course, this makes absolutely no sense. Next, please. And in the midst of this, we went to support the Ohlone people who are fighting, some of you may be aware, to stop the building of a housing development on top of their ancestors at the West Berkeley Shell Mound. And you see behind us a sign, a neon, a lit sign, which is the old Spangers. And so we're right across from Spangers, and the owners, the now owners of this property threw up a chain link fence around this property and hired people. So the fence became covered with ribbons and wishes and prayers, and they hired some people to take them down every day. So they take them down and we put them up. And this will be resolved in court. And so that's about us. We are a grassroots volunteer-driven group with a 6-woman coordinating committee. We developed sort of organically, working groups began to emerge. And here is our contact information. And so as I mentioned, we have groups that concentrate on legislation, some on art, some on nonviolent direct action. There's a San Francisco group who is a combination of many different things, another group in Marin, and each working group has a liaison that connects to the coordinating committee. And so if you want to become more involved, you can go directly to our website, www.1000grandmothers.com, and you can sign up and you will get our updates. And if you want to speak to somebody directly, you can write to us at info@1000grandmothers.net and ask for somebody to get in touch with you to talk to you about any specific questions that you have. And we're also on Facebook at 1000 Grandmothers Bay Area. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. That was fascinating. It's now time for any questions that anybody might have for Rochelle. Steve, you're on mute.
What is the status of the pipeline right now?
The status of the pipeline is that they have done, despite the fact that the state of Minnesota agrees that they do not want the pipeline. It's being built by a Canadian company called Enbridge, an enormous company. And they have cleared the land, so they have taken down thousands of trees. They have dug the trenches and laid the pipe. What they have been waiting for, and why we are going up there as soon as possible, is they're waiting for the thaw that has been necessary for them to connect the pipeline and lay it under the Mississippi so that they can connect it and have the tar sands come through. So this is a cat and mouse game because we really don't know. There will be more court action. There are cases still pending. And the people from, you probably have heard of Winona LaDuke, if you haven't, she's a very well-known Native woman, Ojibwe, who has been fighting for water, the protection of water and land for forever. And they have some pending lawsuits that have yet to be heard. And it's really a race where Enbridge wants as quickly as possible to get this oil flowing. And we are hoping, every single day, every single hour that we can stop the flow of oil is one more moment when this is not happening. And there have been many, many arrests. And as you may be aware, in at least 16 states, there has been legislation either pending or passed to increase the penalties for protesters from lower misdemeanors to higher misdemeanors or even felonies, and including that there would be felonies for those people who help to bring people there in any way. So it's a huge attack on the rights of all protesters and everybody who wants to be able to protest injustice. And so it's really a ticking bomb right now that we're trying to stop. And the person who could stop it right now is Joe Biden.
Or you're on mute.
Yes, my question is, how do you select the causes that you support? What's
What a
the,
good question. We ask ourselves this question all the time. We have said, gee, wouldn't it be nice to just know what we're going to be doing and just work on that and just do that? And boom, along comes some other issue. So we tend to be in reactive mode a lot. And part of how we decide is based on capacity. I mean, we're a grassroots group. We do have 1,000 grandmothers, more than 1,000 grandmothers signed up. But in reality, we probably have about 200 active grandmothers. And it depends if we have the capability or, what kind of capability we have. If we are asked directly, as we have been at times by Native organizations to lend support, we will take a priority, definitely try to do what we can. But I wish there was a real good scientific method that we had to do that. But is a little easier because it's a question of, we limit it to California state legislation. We're not trying to look at all of the legislation. There are some there may be things in different cities that people really have to focus on. But it kind of depends on what came up. It's sort of how we started with Standing Rock. We had no idea when we started at Standing Rock that this is what we would be doing. But we really wanted to join with other elders and with other elder women. We felt like there is a role for us, and we're still trying to find it. Really, honestly, I mean, it's a question. Do we just do what we did in our 20s at half speed? Do we do very different things? How do we take a role at this point? Not all of us can do what we used to do, nor do we think it's even what we want to be doing. So it's an ongoing discussion, which I would love to hear from you about. Thoughts about how, as elders at this time, we participate. Most of us have been activists, since our teens or 20s. So it's a source of questions.
Susan Pierpoint, you put a question in the chat, but why don't you say it aloud so that everyone can hear it? You're on mute.
I actually have two questions. One is, how are you addressing demonstrations and protests that block streets in the states where they have just passed legislation allowing people to drive into protesters on streets?
I know. Well, let me try that one first. So we haven't been in any situations like that because we're pretty local. I mean, there are people who want to start other 1,000 grandmother groups. So we haven't been faced with that yet, although we may be faced with it in Minnesota. That may be our first look into that. And it's a big commitment to decide to face
that's a big commitment.
Circumstances. And so it's meant, deciding if each individual who makes that decision, we'll be working with the National Lawyers Guild and other kinds of people who can help to represent us, because these cases really need to be thrown out and judged unconstitutional. And so it will take work to do that. And so it's and sometimes we really want to get arrested, and we rarely do, because in San Francisco and in Oakland, street demonstrations are not going to result in arrest. But it's a very good question, and I think a lot of people around the country are struggling with how to respond to that, because it really ups the ante quite a bit.
I'm also wondering about whether you're working directly with the Department of Interior, given the fact that the secretary is a registered member of a tribe.
Yes, yes.
And so the fact that that line 3 runs through a reservation is a violation of treaties.
It is a violation of treaties, and with Deb Holland in the Department of the Interior, we're very hopeful that there will be recognition and adherence to some of these treaties, because these treaties are, it's a very complicated set of laws that are not always followed. And you know, it's a total David and Goliath battle. You have, you know, some small tribes without a lot of resources up against the federal government and up against these massive corporations who are yelling treaty rights, and the pipeline's already there. So it's a struggle, it's a big struggle, and I do believe that a lot of that will begin to be addressed. I read that Deb Holland, her family, well, her people have been on their land for 35 generations.
Wow.
So your relationship to place as a definition of who you are is so very different from, certainly from my generation, a very sort of uprooted, be an individual, go where you go. Without that land, without the rice, you're talking about genocide, because that's the end of a culture. Not to mention the poisoning that goes with it.
Rochelle, earlier you talked about different groups of grandmothers in the Bay Area, and you mentioned different ones. And I had thought in the past that there wasn't one in San Francisco, but I think you mentioned that there is.
So we're speaking at a pretty interesting time in terms of our small but mighty organization. There is a group of grandmothers in San Francisco, and they pretty much figure out what they want to be doing. Like they had a vigil, a long vigil on Geary Boulevard for Black Lives Matter after the killing of George Floyd. They have taken on different things to do, but at this point, they are pretty well established as they are, and they don't want to get bigger and bigger. So that's kind of the theme of the moment that we're at in 1,000 Grandmothers, because things have grown sort of as they've grown. And now we're at a moment when we are really trying to figure out how to incorporate more people. How can people join us easily? How can they become part of things? And so this is what we're in the midst of, looking at, you know, making it easy for folks like you to say, okay, here, if you want to join, come to this orientation, then figure out what you want to do and come join us. And we're not quite there. But that's not a reason not to say that you're interested, because your interest and everybody else's interest is sort of a pounding at the door right now, is pushing us forward to figure out how to go into this next stage of transition in an expansion, or at least to get a structure that meets these new needs. I feel like we're constantly shedding our skin. I don't know if that's been an Ashby Village phenomenon in San Francisco. It must have been. I mean, it's, you know, because we're just you're a 501c3, but we're just a grassroots group. And so we're constantly figuring out how can we best meet the needs and respond without completely losing any, what can you call it these days? Brand, 1,000 Grandmothers, you know, where everybody just sort of does their own thing, or where you're actually moving together in some way based, and we have a set of principles, which I can send you. So you have to be in agreement with those.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much. It clarifies, you know, where you are and how people can express interest. John, did you have a question?
Yes, a couple of questions. I'd like you to talk to us about the appropriate participation of males in 1,000 Grandmothers. Also, we're shifting residents to Redwoods and Mill Valley in July. So you could talk to us a little more about what's going on in Marin, that would be helpful. Thank
Sure.
you.
Certainly. So grandfathers are so welcome. Grandfathers are a part of things. My partner is female. We've been together for 29 years, but other people who are partnered have husbands. They boyfriends, sons, who come with us, who are a part of things and are more than welcome to participate, and are, eager to have you be part of things. In Marin, there is a group in Marin, and they, and when you go there, I'd be happy to put you in touch with them. I don't know if exactly what they are doing. They're working on line 3. I know they're going to have some sort of I know. You may know that, I guess it was in San Rafael, a group of young indigenous activists took down the statue of, God, his name is escaping me. What is the big street that is?
Sir Francis Drake.
Sir Francis Drake. And so, because you probably know that Sir Francis Drake was an enemy, a killer, a murderer of Native people. And they do not want that man to be commemorated in their city. And so they took an action and took it down. And now they are facing criminal consequences as a result of that. And so I know that they're having an action to support these young people. And that's kind of a typical sort of grandparent role that we see that we can play an important part of. I know that, and I don't have any idea how this directly influences them, but I know they have some ex-nuns, they have some, they have a strong spiritual base. But I'd be happy to put you in touch. And I think you'll, and good luck. And I hope you really enjoy yourself when you go over to the Redwoods. Yeah.
John, did you have a second question or is that
No,
it?
no,
Okay.
that's it.
Anybody else? Any other questions for Rochelle?
I have a question.
Okay.
I would just love to know, I mean, all of you came to the call today and you're looking for something. And I'm just wondering, what is that? What kind of, if you could give me some idea, what are you looking for at this time in your life? What kind of way to be active? I mean, obviously the climate is of great importance to you or you wouldn't be on the call, but give me some sense, because we're also trying to meet needs of elders.
Steve?
Yeah, for me, I think global warming is an existential issue for us, and we're falling behind. And that's what drew me. I'm trying to find out, who's involved with that, and what are they doing? And as grandmothers, hopefully your great grandchildren will still have an earth to live on.
Hopefully
And
so.
that's my big concern. Greta Thunberg really hits it right on the head. We can't wait, and so that's what I'm looking for.
Right. Well, that's the spirit in which we're moving, and that's one of the reasons that it's so globally connected, because when even now, the Phillips 66 plant in Rodeo is undergoing changes, and they're no longer going to refine fossil fuel, which sounds fabulous. It's like, great, no more fossil fuel, keep it in the ground. They're shifting to some forms of biodiesel. So, and that sounds great. It's like, let's get all this soy oil or coconut oil or whatever else you can do and just fuel ourselves that way. But it turns out that's not such a simple solution at all, because the production of that still creates particulate matter in the air, which increases global warming. And it's a complete global issue, because where are you going to get all that land to have such a huge monocrop as more and more and more endless amounts of soy? Take a look at the Amazon. And so without the Amazon and the trees of the Amazon, what good will this biofuel do when we have no air to breathe, when it's consumed in fire? So it's complex. It's not, this is good, that's bad. And people are out there, thank God, it's not me, but people are out there doing a lot of research, trying to find out about these things. And, but global warming is it. That's what we have to stop.
Anybody else have any feedback for Rochelle to answer her question of your interest? Susan?
I didn't think that much. I mean, I've been very active in the women's movement way back when. And it was easy to take a long view. We took a short view and a long view. I mean, we were young, had lots of energy. And I didn't start thinking about climate until I was holding newborns that were mine. Now, I don't have a lot of time. So I'm tired of the long view. And I'm interested in rabble rousing in a way I never was before.
Yes, we feel like that is, and we obviously do a lot of that, because we don't have the time. I mean, when you say long view, I feel this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, because we're all old enough to, we're sort of at the top of the hill and we're looking ahead, and we can look behind, and this doesn't have time. You can't really negotiate with nature. I mean, we don't have the time for it. And that's why we're supporting the youth who, like Extinction Rebellion, like Sunrise, these organizations of young people who are doing really everything they can, as creatively and as smartly, a lot smarter than I was when I was their age, to try to turn this around. So it's why we, come together and try to give each other support and strength on whatever fronts we have the ability to do.
We have time for one more person to give feedback, and that'll be Judith Coates.
I have this inchoate feeling of gotta do something and not quite knowing where to put it. I love the attachment to the grandmother role. It breaks my heart to think of what my grandchildren will have to go through in their lifetimes. I also badly need hope. I have come to be very pessimistic and cynical, and I don't like that about myself. I feel as though humans are a pox on the planet, and I don't want to be that. I really want to do something beyond symbolic, and I don't know what that is. And so I'm really hungry for something not only, rabble rousing, but also something deeper, something with an attachment to the soul of humanity and the soul of the earth. So
I would invite you to join us. I think you sound to me like so many of the women who have come to that place and are sick of things that are symbolic. And it's hard, to know. I mean, these people, these valve turners our age, who went and got arrested and jumped over a fence and turned off the valves that stopped a pipeline. I mean, they did it. They took a video of themselves doing it. They called and said, "Hi, we just did it." And they waited there to get arrested, and they were exonerated because the need that they were, I can't remember what this kind of defense is called, but when it was more important to stop it than it was to obey the law. And the judge agreed.
I think we're going to have anybody else who have questions. If you could put those questions in the chat, and maybe Rochelle, you could see those questions and address them later. I know there's maybe a couple more, but we're going to have to move on now. Elaine Warren, our note taker and reporter, could you give us a recap of what you've heard today and what you'll be reporting on next Friday on May the 14th?
Sure. So Rochelle Towers gave a presentation of the 1,000 Grandmothers for Futures Generation organization, which was started in 2016 by a small group of women who had worked with the Native American grandmothers to stop the pipeline in North Dakota. And since then, they have continued to work with other Native American grandmothers, but also worked on other issues related to climate change. And those have involved, we saw a number of slides that Rochelle presented showing some of the actions they have taken. The group really focuses on getting out in the community and letting their voice be heard, I would say. And that has included painting murals on streets, joining protests or organizing protests in San Francisco. They've have protests in front of the Army Corps of Engineers, for example, which was the permitting organization for the pipeline in the Dakotas. They have a training group where they train people how to engage in street actions. They have found generally that being older is actually an advantage. The police in the Bay Area, the police don't arrest them, and they are polite and elderly. They are, in addition to organizing protests and walks and actions like that, they've also been involved in legislative actions, working with legislators. Their focus is on state legislation. Art plays a big role in what they do. They have a lot of members who are interested in putting together banners and other things. So an example was putting a banner over I-80 to protest, I believe it was the Chevron refinery, or Line 3, I think, which is another more recent action they've gotten involved with. Line 3 is a pipeline that would bring tar sands from Canada down to Louisiana and go through Ojibwa territory in Minnesota. So they're very actively involved in trying to stop that. They've raised $15,000, and some members are going to go to Minnesota to help people there. They are also involved in working with youth groups. And for example, the Extinction Rebellion and Sunrise groups in the Bay Area protested against actions by Chevron refinery, and they've helped support those, both joining them and preparing sandwiches and that sort of thing. One of the things that Rochelle clarified was that you don't have to have grandchildren to be a grandmother, and you can also be a grandfather and join their group. They have organizations, there's a group in the East Bay, but there's also some working groups in San Francisco and Marin. They have about 1,000 people who are involved with the organization, probably 200 of which are very active. So if you're interested in really getting out there and showing your face in public and rabble rousing, I think was the term that Rochelle used. This is an organization that's got a well established structure to help you do that. There were some questions what is the status of the Line 3 pipeline right now? And Rochelle gave an update on that and said it's really a race between the developer and court actions, because it is well on its way to being ready to begin to send tar sands down to Louisiana. And she pointed out that those tar sands would result in oil that would be all exported and really isn't needed. So it's not only destroying native land, but also horribly contributing to climate change. There was a question on how causes that they support are selected. And she said that really depends on capacity, and they tend to be reactive. When an issue comes up, they see what their resources are and see how they can respond to that. Sometimes they get requests from Native American groups, and then they try to support those groups. There was a question about how they're addressing demonstrations in states where legislation now allows drivers to drive into protesters. And Rochelle mentioned that they haven't had to deal with that issue yet. That's not an issue here in the Bay Area, but it's obviously something that they anticipate may be addressed in the future. And they would be working probably with organizations like the National Lawyers Guild to try to help come up with strategies. There was a question on how they're working with the Department of Interior now that there is a secretary who's a Native American. And Rochelle mentioned that they are very hopeful, that the treaties, Native American treaties, are really complicated, a lot of complex issues, and it's difficult for them, many of which are small tribes, to be up against corporations and the government. So there is hope that having a Native American secretary will really make a difference. There was a question about Native Americans here. Are there Native Americans? And Rochelle said yes, and that they are involved in kind of their own organization. And the 1,000 Grandmothers organization is really looking to bring more people into it. So it's a good place to come. They're looking for growth. There was a question about room for men in the organization, as well as work in Marin. And as I explained, grandfathers are welcome. There is a group in Marin. They're largely working on Line 3. And then Rochelle had a question about what everyone in the group is looking for. And a couple of things that were mentioned were just getting more information about what's going on with climate change, looking at actions that can be taken now, and looking for hopeful things that people can do. And I think that about summarizes it, Bill.
I'd say that's a fantastic summary, Elaine. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
With the other talks, what we've done is to take the notes by the note taker and send them out. So we'll do that with all of you. We'll send these notes out to all of you, so you'll have a summary of what this talk was about today and the Q&A. And Meryl, can you capture the chat so that could be into the notes? Okay, you're nodding your head yes, but you're on mute. So I'm guessing that's a yes. Okay, so thank you, Elaine. And Rochelle, you have one more thing to say.
Just wanted to say, I forgot to include one thing. We have a monthly study group for people who are interested, and the study group which you can join is about the intersection of racism and climate justice, because you cannot have this kind of extractive activity without disposable land and people.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So this is as I said, the 5th and final Friday morning climate talk. And all of you today, as well as all the people who have been attending the other 4 Friday morning climate talks, are invited to return next Friday on May the 14th for the second large climate action session. At the first one back in March, we had 65 people on the call. We'll probably have over 30 on this call, maybe not 65, but we're still getting people signing up. I want to tell you that this will be a chance for you to come back and discover what actions people have taken or what actions people are considering after hearing all of the Friday morning climate talks. We will all share our thoughts and our plans. And I want you to know, we're also going to talk about barriers to getting involved and how to get over or around those barriers. And I want to let you know that there's going to be an excellent video. And Steve Hayashi mentioned Greta Thunberg. And this video is with Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough. It's not long, but it is powerful. And it is really encapsulates, it states everything why we're all on this call today. So I thoroughly encourage you to come back next Friday. It will be the culmination of this effort, and your contribution to the discussion will be invaluable. We need to help each other and to learn and motivate each other to get involved in climate actions and to make a difference for future generations. So any other questions or thoughts today? Cora?
Yes, Bill, those of us who have been in this meetings, do we need to register again for the one on the 14th?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thanks.
It's not difficult. All you do is respond to Meryl. Why don't you explain how to do it?
Just send an email to info@ashbyvillage.org. And Ashbyvillage, all one word, .org. Yeah. Whoops.
Anybody
You're
else have any
muted.
other questions?
I have a comment. There's a good organization called Fossil Free California that I've been active in. And before the pandemic, they had a big party in Berkeley. And they had a little workshop that you could join, not there, but later online, to tell you how to divest of all your investments that contribute to fossil fuel companies, and also to work on CalSTRS and CalPERS and UC Berkeley to get them all to divest from fossil fuel companies.
Okay, well, thank you, Linda. I want to thank you, Rochelle, for this excellent presentation. It was really engrossing. I found it and informative, really helpful. And I hope all of you learned something today. I believe you did. And hopefully some of you will get involved with 1,000 Grandmothers. And I hope you'll all join us next Friday, May the 14th. And please register if you're planning to come. So thanks everybody for being on the call. And I think that's it for today.
Thank you for having me as a guest. Thank you.
It was excellent, really good. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.